Welcome back, and happy Juneteenth, happy Wednesday. And I've got PG here in the house with me today, and we're going to be breaking down. Jay right now is flying in an airplane, so he's not with us in the spirit, but we're going to be breaking down lots of fun because OV season is here. When OV season is here, things start happening, and we're going to try to help you guys with the difference between things to get excited about and things that are actually, rumor. So, PG, how you feeling, brother?
Man, I feel like I'm running around with the chicken with its head cut off right now. So,
well, hopefully Chicken will join us at some point here. But let's go ahead and start it off with a little quarterback fun. Some quarterback fun. All right, so we saw the top 10 drop for 2026 Jaden O'Neal earlier today. He dropped it with the little good news coming, and so now the good news is here. We've heard great things about Mr. O'Neal, the 26 quarterback out of California. So PG, give me a little something on Mr. O'Neal.
Yeah, man, I think we just all expect that to go Oregon and Ohio State's way. It's just what it feels like, right?
If you want to send your DMs to me, I'll give you PG's address, and you guys can take up with that. And don't worry, because I guess you don't live in Norman, right? PG, you live in Oklahoma City, or is it Norman?
I live in Mustang.
Okay, so Mustang police, I don't know if they're going to show up and check your house for potential miscreants like Lincoln was trying to send people in Oklahoma after he bailed. So but yeah, no, it's starting to feel really, really good. When you see the film, we went over it on past couple shows. When you saw the film with Jaden O'Neal and PG, you were there, so I want you to talk a little bit more about that. But when he started throwing the ball and he started working out, what was that like around him? Like, was there a crowd around him, or was it just, people, just another guy, or what was it like?
Yeah, so I'm actually standing over there with the guys over at Sooner Scoop, and you had Randall Sweet from All Sooners. We were kind of all standing there watching the quarterbacks, enjoying Peyton Houston because he was on campus and he was kind of the star there at that time. And you see Jaden O'Neal walk in through the two main doors of the Everett Center, and kind of you just felt everybody kind of turn, look, and I describe it this way. Like, Jaden O'Neal just has that kind of swagger about him where he walks in, people know who he is, like you can't miss him. And then he gets out on the field and starts throwing the ball, and you're like, oh, like this guy's for real. But I think the thing that really stuck out to me, and when Jay saw him as well, like he even agreed, like I think he's listed at like 6'3", 6'3.5" on some of these sites. Yeah. That man's like a solid 6'4", like maybe pushing 6'4.5", and they say 200, like it's a really good 200 pounds. I mean, the kid is solidly built with a good frame. But when you start to see him throw the ball, like you understand why the hype around Jaden O'Neal is the way it is. Really smooth ball. Like, and I said in my video yesterday that the wide receiver talent was like there were some good future wide receivers in that group. I'm not going to say any of them are bad, but they're not refined and they're not developed enough yet. So the group didn't look super great, but some of those kids are going to be like high 4-star. Maybe one of them will be a 5-star in the future. They just weren't refined and weren't, fully developed yet. And so, Jaden O'Neal's throwing to guys that, like they were dropping passes from other quarterbacks, and like he was dropping dimes to some of these kids, and some of these kids weren't running the right route. So I thought Jaden O'Neal looked really good, and I think if you're an Oklahoma Sooner fan, like you feel really good about him potentially being a 5-star down the road. And I mean, right now we have Kevin Sperry competing for the Elite 11. I don't know if he's going to win it. Jaden O'Neal was one of those guys that I look at and says, oh, like he has all of the abilities to go out there and win the Elite 11.
And we saw another graphic hit. I didn't pull it up. So and again, if you've ever watched us, any graphics, all that fun stuff, that's all Jay. I just talk, and it's half the time I don't even know what I'm saying. So, but when we were seeing the graphics for the Elite 11, it showed the how many quarterbacks and which schools had the most Elite 11s. And so, we've got a great history in that program. So Kevin Sperry, just keep it going. for this year. Hopefully, we see Mr. O'Neal here next year, because, I mean, he's one of those guys that when he's speaking, he looks, and I said this the other day, he looks like Jameis Winston when he was in college. I mean, just the build and how big he is. And, Jackson right now is one of our bigger quarterbacks in some time, for, the established full-time all-year starter. So going from a Baker Mayfield to a Kyler Murray to a Jalen Hurts, all those guys are right in the 6 foot area and a little lower. So to bring in a 6'4", a prototypical size quarterback with some ability to move around in the pocket, I mean, that opens up so much more. And that's something that Oklahoma hasn't seen. And I just want to point out that you're starting to see that Oklahoma, if you're throwing out graphics and saying, oh yeah, but half of those Elite 11 quarterbacks were because of Lincoln Riley or because somebody, you can't really say that at this point, because quarterbacks continue to look at Oklahoma regardless of who the head coach is, who the OC is, because we've got a proven track record here. So if Jaden O'Neal is somebody who pulls the trigger for Oklahoma this summer, what are we getting as far as leadership?
Yeah. And before I get to that point, I mean, Oklahoma is a quarterback school. Like, yes, we had plenty of quarterbacks before Lincoln Riley.
Oh, yes.
I mean, Sam Bradford, he was a 3-star out of high school, and look what they were able to do with him. But I think with Jaden O'Neal, and this kind of goes into the leadership factor, you're already kind of seeing what kind of leader he can be, because you already see guys wanting to follow him. And I think there were 5 or 6 people that were at the camp that he asked to be there. So, and I have to keep telling people this, Marcus Harris came on an official visit. Emmett Jones did a great job. But you really think that was a coincidence that Marcus Harris showed up the same weekend that Jaden O'Neal showed up? Like, no. Jaden O'Neal is going to be one of those guys where, and I love how you pointed it out with the height, because this is something I think Oklahoma's probably lacked in a quarterback for so long. It's been one of the attributes that they've lacked. And we kind of had it with Bevel, but Bevel wasn't athletic enough to scramble out of the pocket. So he's a straight pocket passer. Back in the day, you wanted tall quarterbacks, but it was okay for them to kind of just be a stick in the backfield. Now like you've got
Landry Jones.
Yeah. Now you got now you got a Jackson Arnold who is at least athletic enough to move the ball around, like with his feet. And then now you're going to have Jaden O'Neal, who I believe is probably, I'm not going to say he's Caleb Williams athleticism, but he's, I think, as close as we're going to see for a while at Oklahoma. Some people have even said close to Jalen Hurts, which I said, if you say Jalen Hurts, it's a perfect comparison. But Jaden O'Neal, and the reason why you want this height in your quarterback is he's going to be able to see over some of these tall offensive linemen. But that means he's going to be able to direct traffic a little bit better. There were times where sitting in the fans, sitting as fans in the stadium, you see Kyler or Baker or Caleb or sometimes even Rattler. They were missing wide receivers down the field, and that's because they have 6'6" and 6'7" offensive linemen standing in front of them, and they can't see a small Marquise Brown, 50, 60 yards down the field. So as far as that goes, I think it's really, really good that Oklahoma's going to get a taller quarterback, but leadership-wise, Oklahoma, you're going to see some probably quick effects if he commits to Oklahoma with probably, I would say, I'd bet we get a wide receiver within the first couple months of him being here. And I would bet this running back room is probably closed up by the end of the year as well.
It's more than just even skill positions, because you said, we saw a lot of reports of him actually reaching out to Babaloa and Haywood and Fasusi and working on offensive line too. Because what does he want in front of him? He wants a stable of big, strong, absolutely just phenomenal, offensive linemen in front of him. So he's doing work on the 25 class too, not just 26 and beyond, but 25. And I also saw him hitting up Caden Jones here, Kewan Jones's son, already also. So, you're seeing a lot of that. And if you guys remember, I think that, does the Tebow hate still reign? No, it's not hate anymore. I think for most of us, we've been, validated at this point, because now you're seeing we'll get to that in a little bit, but now you're starting to see just crazy decommits from California. Another big reason why I like the poker chip. Once you commit, you're here for Venables. But Caleb Williams himself, in 2020, when the campuses were shut down, he was facilitating and orchestrating these visits. He was showing up on campus. And if you guys remember, people were not happy about this, because they were saying, like, how is Oklahoma doing this? Like, this is crap. Like, you can't be doing this. But the coaches weren't, publicly involved at that point. So you're seeing these leadership qualities out of Jaden O'Neal, and trying to get people, in and going. And so I'm really, really, really excited, for the opportunity for this. And no, he has not publicly committed. That's not been there yet. There's not a public commitment date out there. But if you're starting to read the tea leaves, you got to feel good about these things, because it just looks like the all signs are pointing towards Oklahoma. And I saw 10 visits. There's not going to be 10 visits. Like, I don't think that is going to be something that ends up happening. I don't think a lot of people have that capability for the 10 visits. But tell me this: do you think that the charisma and that leadership stuff from from Jaden O'Neal, do you think that these are pieces that he is that he has been working on prior to, or do you think that this is a more recent?
I think it's a little bit more recent. But for the people asking about commitment dates, I don't think you have to wait, but maybe a couple more weeks. And I don't think he takes any more visits outside of the ones maybe this weekend. Like, I think he takes his Michigan visit, and he's probably done after that. His other one that he was supposed to take in Oregon is in July, and I just don't see that one happening. I really don't.
Yeah.
But no, like, he's a really good recruiter, and this is another thing that people don't understand. During dead periods and stuff, like, your coaches can't really, like, there's periods where your coaches can't talk to recruits.
Yeah.
But peers can recruit still. And I think that's really important. If you get a guy like Jaden O'Neal on, who I think there are recruits that really respect him, like, and they look at him and say, okay, like, that's a guy that I want to play for, because everybody wants to play with an elite quarterback. I think Jaden O'Neal is going to reel in some good talent, and he has to, like, I think there is a little bit of like, hey, yeah, like, I want to recruit in the 25 class, because those are going to be the guys that are blocking for me as well if I potentially want to be there, right? So he's got, like, there's going to be some work to do, and I feel like he's going to be a really integral piece to Oklahoma's recruiting efforts here for the rest of this year and even going into next year.
And that's, again, you made the comment about Marcus Harris. Marcus Harris dropped a top 5, if I'm not mistaken, that did not include Oklahoma.
Nope.
Just a few weeks ago. So I think that the next person we talk about needs to get his flowers, and then more flowers, and then more flowers. I'm talking stacking up Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and Valentine's Day type of flowers, but that's Emmett Jones. We'll get that to a second, but Emmett Jones reaches out and, brings in Marcus Harris. Marcus Harris commits on the 17th, which was 2 days ago. And so this is another one out of Mater Dei, out of California. So PG, if I'm not mistaken, I was told emphatically that USC was the mecca of college football, and it seems like California kids kind of like Oklahoma. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
And USC is just falling apart. And if you're an Oklahoma fan, you love this, because Colin Cowherd told you Oklahoma wasn't going to be able to recruit. Lincoln Riley told you Oklahoma wasn't going to be able to recruit. But you have now established a pipeline into one of the best high schools in the country. Like, not only people realize that Mater Dei produces, what would you say, 10, 12 blue chippers a year?
It's like IMG. It's like IMG. When guys come out of Mater Dei, they're studs.
Yeah, and they're like, borderline P4 starters already at that point. I will say this, though. USC has not done a good job at keeping kids in their state as of recently. A&M, they've went in and they've taken the best player in the state the third best player in the state. You have to go all the way down to number 4 before USC finally has a commit in that state, and he's the number 79th overall player in the country. So, I mean, USC's got to figure it out. They have to get back to the Pete Carroll days, where basically Ed Orgeron shows up to a high school football game for somebody, and the USC staff kind of laugh because, it's like, well, what are you doing in our backyard? Like, you have no chance. But for Oklahoma, this is a really good shot because modern day, they produce a lot of good defensive linemen. So this gives Todd Bates an in now, but also a lot of good offensive talent. You see a lot of good offensive kids come out of there. So maybe this opens up the door for Emmett Jones to finally get a 5-star here at Oklahoma, because I know we've kind of been biting at the chomp for that one in terms of wide receiver for Emmett Jones.
And so modern day high school, some of the famous, alum, you've got Matt Barkley was a USC quarterback, Matt Leinart, USC quarterback, Bryce Young, obviously number 1 overall pick from Alabama, Amon-Ra St. Brown, JT Daniels. And before you knock JT Daniels, I mean, the guy has the Guinness Book of World Record for college years played. So, he's got to have that one. So no, taking shots at JT Daniels is always fun. But you look at Emmett Jones, and Emmett Jones is making his salaries at $550,000 with incentives, which could reach up to $660,000. And I know that there's a Board of Regents meeting coming up. Curtis Lofton's slated to get a nice little pay bump and officially take that GM title. But when we look at Emmett Jones, and you start throwing his name out there with some of the best receiving coaches like Brian Hartline, I still think Hartline is a little further down the rung because he has just been pulling whatever he wants, essentially. And they're stacking 5-star on 5-star on 5-star. But Brian Hartline's making $1.6 million. So that's $1 million more than the top end of Emmett Jones's contract. So what do you think we need to see from Emmett in the next, I would say, 18 months for him to be up close to that $1 million slot? And then also, what do you think happens, with guys like DeMarco and, other people on the offensive staff? Because, I mean, if you give him, essentially like a 2X bump, you got to have conversations with the other staff members too, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to depend on recruiting, right? What are you bringing in? Todd Bates finally brought in a 5-star interior guy, which is why I think he got the bump he did. Miguel Chavis has brought in a 5-star edge. I need to see Seth Luttrell bring in a 5-star quarterback. But Brian Hartline, here's why he deserves the money he has deserved. 6 5-stars.
Yeah.
6 5-stars. And he puts guys in the first round. Like, that's what he does. And by the way, he also turned down the Cincinnati head coaching job when that was open. So he's had opportunities to leave Ohio State for more money, and he hasn't done it. So for Emmett Jones, I think the next step is, like, I think you've got to land that 5-star. Like, you need to get into the same category as Miguel Chavis, as Brandon Hall, and as Todd Bates right now. That's where you need to sit. And then from there, I think it's okay. Well, how many are you bringing in? Like how many top 150 guys are you bringing in? Like, are you putting anybody into the league? Right? What does that development look like? Like, if he puts Burks and Nick Anderson into the first round, or, Burks into the first round and Nick Anderson in the first 3, I think you're going to go, okay, that's a really good step in the right direction, because that's what Brian Hartline does. But until I start to see him land 5 stars, I don't know if I'm ready to put him over Brian Hartline just yet. I mean, Brian Hartline he's an animal when it comes to recruiting.
He's done a really, really good job. And also, I mean, you got to throw in, Jaden Gibson in there too, because I'm just 100%. I think that guy is going to have his breakout year this year, but I worry about how many balls there are to be thrown, right? Because you've got Nick Anderson. You're going to have a tight end that I don't know if you know this, PG, but tight ends can actually catch footballs and beyond just being extra blockers. We forgot about that because it's been a while, but seriously, the tight ends are going to have passes thrown their way. You've got Burks. You're going to have Farouk. And I'm not hearing the greatest things on Andrew Anthony. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. I don't think we see Andrew Anthony this year,
which is a good thing. That's a good thing.
Which is okay. But right now we've got you've got Harrison Harris at wide receiver with Grayson Harris and Marcus Harris. You also have which the forgotten man in this room is going to be ET because Elijah Thomas is a stud. He is an absolute stud.
And that could be his first 5-star, by the way, because I think Elijah Thomas, when you watch the film, that's a 5-star. Like, I think, one, the problem that's holding him back is he plays in Chakotah, Oklahoma. So he's got to attend more camps. And then he's just going to have to put up ungodly numbers out there. Like, I think that's the only thing that's holding him back is where he plays. But that could be his first 5-star. And by the way, I got it wrong. Brian Hartline actually has 8 5-stars. All of them except for one he's the primary on. So,
well, he's done a great job, but with ET, he's pushing that 6'1" frame, so he's got the bigger piece. I think it might be for Emmett Jones. I think it's going to be less about the 5-star piece and more about the development and continuing to see that, because these 5-stars and these borderline 5-stars like Elijah Thomas, I won't go super deep and say any of the other guys like Marcus or Grayson are going to be pushing the 5-star round, but having those guys in the rooms that we already have, you're going to see just the athletes continue to stack. And yes, Texas is on 3 different 5-star wide receivers, but when 5-stars go to Texas, it just, you got to show me. Yeah, I'm a prove it guy, and we got to see a little bit more out of that, because with the talent that they put in the draft this year, you got to feel like it's not too far off to say like those guys actually severely underperformed based off where they were drafted. So let's talk one more receiver that some crystal balls are starting to kind of drip in. Some rumors are starting to drip in, and that's the human joystick juke button, Cortez Mills. Tell me about Cortez. Did you get a chance to see him?
I have not got a chance to see him in person. I've seen his tape, and I've seen that he's 6'1". Now, again, I like Emmanuel Choice because of his size. Emmanuel Choice is 6'4". I like those taller wide receivers. But Cortez Mills, as Mars James said, like, he is also a potential 5-star kid. Like, that's a kid that can work himself into that territory. The only thing is, and this is my only hesitation, you're going up against Clemson, who, they took Sammy Brown from you, but like that was kind of expected. They took Bryant Wesco from you, but that one was like you weren't in a battle for them, right? So like Clemson and Oklahoma are very similar programs in the way that they recruit, and I'm curious to see what Clemson's edge over us would be, because they have Garrett Riley, who I think actually runs probably a better offense than Luttrell's going to run, at least a faster one. He's just got to have more wide receiver depth to do it, because I think last year they didn't have enough. And so Cade Klubnik didn't have enough weapons. So I think this year you're going to see Clemson's offense go up. But, LSU. He's going to LSU this weekend. So LSU might throw some money around, and that's kind of what I'm watching. So I'm not ready to count Mills in this class yet, especially when you have Choice visiting this weekend and Andrew Marsh. And Andrew Marsh is still a talent, although I don't think it's likely he ends up in this class anymore. With the way Emmett Jones recruits, you can't ever count it out at this point, because he's a good 6-foot slot receiver. And Andrew Marsh is freaky talented. So I look at Cortez Mills and I say, if we landed him, you now have a chance of getting 2 5-star wide receivers in your class, just through development alone. I just don't know if we land Cortez Mills. I'm not ready to call it yet. I've seen the predictions. You still got the predictions in for Clemson. You got so basically it's like right now it's like 2-4-7 against rivals. Which one's going to pull through on their that's a whole side recruitment thing that I absolutely love. Right now we've got 2 sites pinned to each other. Which one's going to win?
And I do want to correct you on one thing. Marsh did cancel his visit for this weekend here, so he done. I think that's done. I think that when you see some of the crystal balls, and these guys talk to each other too, so there's got to be some kind of hinting. But for Andrew Marsh being a receiver that Emmett Jones and the Oklahoma staff has been after for a significant amount of time, when you see that, But when you go watch the Cortez Mills video, yes, I said the human, juke button. He is L2 all day long, but his ability to catch the 50-50 ball and to go up and high point the ball, I don't know if I've seen anybody. I mean, he looks like Odell Beckham Jr., which I hate that with him going to LSU and the way that LSU has continued to put folks out there. And then, Justin Jefferson just getting the contract where he gets every dollar printed by the, federal mint going forward. But I got to say that receiving in the 25 class is going to be exciting one way or the other. The 26 class, it's going to be exciting. And you got to think that Emmett Jones is already, having conversations. And I know he is. I know he talks to Tay Ellis, which is one of the 27 kids. And I mean,
so good.
And yeah. And so there's a lot of conversation going on. And so again, like I said, if you combine all the flowers that for all the big holidays, I mean, that's what we got to give Emmett Jones. And you continue to see where Brent Venables is taking this program. I mean, how long ago was it, I mean, about this time last year to where we're going, what's the wide receiver room going to look like? Is Emmett Jones going to be able to do anything? And then he comes out and balls out this entire year.
Now, was there a better pick for a wide receiver coach than Emmett Jones? Because I think now that Emmett Jones is the wide receiver coach, we can talk about it. Mm-hmm. Rashad Samples was almost our wide receiver coach.
Yeah.
So would Rashad Samples at this point have been a better pick? Because they both, I mean, their connections in the Dallas area are unmatched. And yeah. Emmett Jones has performed, I think, 10 times better than anybody else could have imagined.
Yeah. And, a lot of people wanted Malcolm Kelly also to come back home. And that was a huge push was for Malcolm Kelly too. So it was those three names being tossed out there. Now, obviously, as Cam Newton said, hindsight's 50-50. So we just 100%, Emmett he's working. And we had DeMarco. Ohio State made a massive, massive run for DeMarco Murray in the summer, or I guess after the year this year. And we got him locked in. And then now also, Beatonbow was trying to get poached by Alabama. So when you hear Ohio State, Alabama coming after your
Bama wanted Bill Beatonbow? I thought he couldn't recruit.
No, he can't recruit. So it's
okay.
It's
I'm glad we got that.
You don't have to be able to recruit if you're at Alabama. So correct, no offense to our boy Ty, but it's Bill Beatonbow is an offensive line coach, and if you want to get into that argument, we can have that argument. But I will just say, 5-star offensive tackles that are plug and play. You fight absolutely every single program in the country for. You do. Yeah. So let's move on. Let's talk about 6'3", 263 edge Isaiah Gibson. Let's talk Trojan tears. And I'm not going to go in of all the caveats that we could make fun of by the phrase Trojan tears, but we got 2 decommitments, 5-star defensive linemen from USC in less than 18 hours. Tell me about Isaiah Gibson. I mean, he's still a huge potential Georgia lean. Anytime that you have 5-star defensive linemen not from your own backyard, that could be a situation. So tell me a little bit about Isaiah Gibson.
Yeah. So it's funny that everybody. This is something that I always laugh at. Everybody always assumes a kid from Georgia is a Georgia lean or Georgia's in the front running. People do know the last 3 years, Georgia has not done a good job of keeping their top 10 players in the state. They mainly will get 2 to 3, but Florida State, Clemson, Texas A&M, Alabama, Ohio State, they have all came in there and taken some of their top out. Nebraska, which I don't really count Dylan Raiola as a top player in their state because he moved it there, but yeah. He's in the rankings, so we'll count him, right? They don't do a good job of keeping kids in their state. So I don't know where this, just like confidence is that Georgia's going to land Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson. But no, Isaiah Gibson has a really good relationship with Miguel Chavis, and he mentions it a lot. and he even was telling that to somebody the other day, another source who was talking to him. He was wearing a Georgia jacket and a Georgia backpack at the time, and still said, yeah, like my relationship with Miguel Chavis is unmatched. But one of the things that I find interesting is the defensive end room. It feels like it's going to be really full by the end of the cycle, because with what you're losing, you might pull in 4 guys, Shield Knight, Nixon, Petjak, and then count one up, whether it's Gibson or Rogbo or Granville. Man, if you land Gibson and Miguel Chavis gets himself another 5-star defensive end, like, guys, I hate to tell you, Miguel Chavis probably ain't going to be here in 3 years. He's really good. But Gibson's really talented, and I think you bring him in. That's a guy that I think sees significant time for you in year 1.
And that's a pretty stellar deal. Before we continue, PG, I want to talk about this because I just like taking care of people who need to be taken care of. And if you guys don't follow PG and the PG show, you need to. And if you're on any message boards and you see any slander on any of the content creators who cover Oklahoma, I just encourage you don't take part in that, because there's always opportunities for people to, talk down because they've got a preference. And, someone may have an OU Insiders preference. Somebody may have a 247 preference. Somebody may have a Scoop preference. And so, PG, I'm just super impressed with all the work that you've been doing. I know that you've been having lots of conversations with players, with family members, with handlers. And, between Jay, myself, you, a lot of the other guys that we talk to, some who are on, right now, it's good to hear us out, right? Because there's conversations, and not all of your sources are dudes who know a dude who knew another dude. Like, we're talking to some players in these moments. And so when PG says stuff, or you see Jay or I pop out there, we don't listen to, stuff behind paywalls. That's an old way of doing things. I think that players are open to have conversations more and more and more with content creators, because
especially in the NIL era.
Oh yeah, 100%. So, all right. So let's again talk Terry, because you talked a little bit about Gibson, and as another DN that you could potentially bring in here. That's 2 years in a row. If you land a 5-star, you pair it with the 24-year, which still blows a lot of folks' minds, and the prior year with PJ. Tell me a little bit about Terry, because he's one that I don't have the same, warm and fuzzies around.
Yeah, so I actually reached out to him because he said his recruitment's 100% open. He wants to make some new relationships. So I reached out to him to be like, yo, well, what's your interest in Oklahoma? And has Oklahoma reached out to you? Because I know they've offered him, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if you don't camp at Oklahoma, sometimes the offer is not committable. And I don't remember Terry coming on campus. So I promise you, if I hear of Terry coming to Oklahoma for a visit, y'all will be the first to know, because I'll be a little excited for that. But Oklahoma has Brandon Brown coming on campus this week, a Texas commit. So although you might not land Justice Terry, you've got a good shot, I think, at Brandon Brown. He currently committed to Texas. I don't think that's going to stick. You see some flip predictions in for LSU with Bo Davis. But Bates, man, like, he's one of those guys where he's going to pull one on you every cycle. He's going to get one guy that you didn't expect, or one that you didn't look at. And I mean, up until this week, Brandon Brown's not a name that we've talked about. So, and I point back all the way to last cycle with Jaden Jackson. Like, that was a guy that, I mean, he came on campus, we all kind of like blew it off. And then, like, after he left, everybody was like, oh, wait, hold up. This, like, it's for real. And then Oklahoma ended up landing him. So, just like Emmett Jones with Todd Bates, you can't count anything out on the recruiting trail for him.
And I really don't see a weakness in the coaching staff when it comes to recruiting at this moment. And again, I'm not going to take any of the Beanbo slander, because he's fighting I think one of the toughest battles, but
people don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, it's a 5-star offensive tackle of Michael. I talked about this with Jay the other day. Michael Fasusi right now, I think is a borderline, if he could go to the NFL, borderline first-round pick. Borderline right now as he sits. He's got the right frame. He's got really good size, really good technique. Like, that's a guy that you pull, borderline first round. People are going to pay for that in college. I hate to tell you that. It's like your top positions that are going to be paid for: quarterback, offensive line, and defensive line, in that order. And offensive line might be pretty close to quarterback.
The numbers that are kind of being tossed around with the 26 Texas commit at the $9 million. I don't think that, those are not common numbers, but those are legitimate numbers that, teams and, programs are throwing out there. So when you're talking about quarterback and the defensive tackles, guys that you can, bring in and completely just go, all right, there's the field. We'll see you in the starting lineup. People are going to drop that money, and I've done some work here recently with other schools' collectives and heard conversations with their actual collectives through my big boy job, and there's different tiers. Like, there's the collectives that are raising the money for NIL in general, but you also have private donors who will hop in with $100K out of the middle of nowhere to help out with an offensive lineman, or $500,000 to help out with a defensive tackle. And those things are actually being thrown out there because it's legitimate. And, I see Joe John, the tight end recruiting. I know, we haven't seen smiles out of that. But Devon Mitchell was a five-star tight end. He was the number one tight end in this class, and he reclassified pretty late. And it wasn't an early deal, and then he committed. So Joe John did bring in him. He got Bauer Sharp on campus. He got Jake Roberts on campus, and we've got a 26 tight end.
One of the best blocking tight ends in the country.
And he is going to probably be the de facto starter at tight end, at least early. And so he being the weakest recruiter, it's different than having Tim Kish or Bruce Kittles, or, any other elder statesmen that were defensive coordinators. Like, these guys are doing some absolute work, and it's hard for everybody to shine like that because it just does not have you can't have the top defensive line recruiter. You can't have the top D end recruiter. You can't have the top quarterback. Like, that's just hard. Nobody has that piece, right?
Unless you were Nick Saban, Alabama, then you felt like you kind of had it all. Because Holman Wiggins, well, he was kind of doing it all for Alabama.
Yeah, it's Tim Kish being a name that not a lot of folks have heard of. And hey, real quick, let's just I just want to say thanks for hopping in here on a middle of the day show, and listening to sports radio in Oklahoma outside of when Teddy's on or certain other guys are on, or our boy Travis Davidson. Outside of that, there's not a lot of great stuff to listen to. So if you're enjoying it on the way home, guys, thanks for pulling up. I see James Thrice. Thanks for coming in here. Satterfield, what is going on, sir? Greg, Sooner Cowboys. I think the first one in here was Dan in his 18-wheeler rolling through Kansas. So just love it. Just love it. So, all right. Linebacker. There's linebacker funk happening. And what's up, Big Trap? And so linebacker stuff is happening. One of the favorite ones is a name. And when I recorded my video on just his film breakdown, I was Googling stuff, looking for interviews where somebody had said his name. But Mark Ianacher is a big guy that was on campus here recently. And it went from not so much to, oh my gosh, this could be somebody that we're looking at. So I did the breakdown on him. This is he's a bigger guy. He looks big. He plays a lot of running back also, some pretty good feet. And linebacker is a position that we are not recruiting very heavily just because of how stacked that room is. But we got a couple names in the linebacker core who Zach Alley and Brent Venables are going after. So give me your thoughts on Mark.
Yeah. So Mark, and I believe it's Ihinichur. Um,
Again, it's like
I
Adebaware. How many pronunciations did we hear about PJ's name?
I've
So,
heard Peter Adebayor, Adi
yeah.
Bauer. Like I've heard so many different variations of that name. But no, so Mark's interesting. I talked to a source on Monday. I think it was Monday. It was either Sunday or Monday, and they told me 90%. And I followed back up, and it's still like 90%. So his teammates with Jaden O'Neal. I think you can kind of put two and two together there. The interesting thing here is I was talking to Jay, and I was like, it's funny because Oklahoma really wasn't in that great of position for linebackers in this class, and now all of a sudden it seems like they could literally take two. I'm like, would they take two? And the answer was, yeah, they're going to take two. So like,
Mhm.
if they could take Mark and Elijah Melendez and you land two linebackers, like what a turnaround Zach Alley and Brent Venables have made in this class. Because I literally thought we were going to walk out and go, we just got Marcus James, who can play linebacker,
Yeah.
can play linebacker. So I'm like, this is really interesting. So yeah, Marky Hennecourt, I think he's a really good prospect. I like Elijah Melendez though, and that's
Yeah.
the one I really want. I don't want to get my hopes up though, because he's going back to Miami. I don't know if Miami ponies up and pays the money, and you still have Ole Miss in that recruitment. But Elijah Melendez, Oklahoma, I would say right now, I feel like they're the leader. But I in that recruitment, I think that could change pretty quickly.
And that happens a lot too, because I mean, these guys come in and they get the attention. You know, they see it. It's hard to visit Oklahoma and not leave. I mean, this is going to sound a little cheesy, but it's almost like church camp. Like you go and you are around just such a high quality group of people, and it's hard not to leave and not just be a little bit more jazzed about that. So, you know, I at the beginning with the Brent Venables, like once you commit, you can't take any more visits. Like I wondered how that was going to fly. I mean, we're 3 years into this now, and I I personally feel pretty good that any of the decommits that we've had under Venables, like most of us could either see it coming or it was like, well, we're also talking to a couple of other guys and that didn't sit well with them. So Melendez is a little bit bigger than Mark.
Yep.
But they are also developing a relationship together. So if you have, and yeah, Marcus James, he is going to be a stud. He is going to be a stud. And he is going to be another one of those guys like a Mike Boganowski or a Reggie Powers III, who is like, you see that guy with the capabilities of playing safety, playing cheetah, playing linebacker. That's, I mean, that in itself to say like you could play linebacker or cheetah or potentially even some safety, that positionless football that Venables is, you know, building towards. So tell me what you like about Melendez, because I absolutely think this guy is a freak of nature.
Who, Melendez or
Melendez.
Oh yeah, no, Melendez is 100% a freak of nature, and I'm trying to pull up his size right now because I didn't have it in front of me. But no, I mean 6'2", 225. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
because I think Mark is a little bigger.
He's like 6'1", 2. No, Mark is actually same height, and I think he's like 210, 215. But he looks bigger. He looks like Mark. Mark kind of looks like. I mean, he looks like Kenneth Murray. You know, he's big. He's got long arms, and then but he also kind of gives me a Mikey Henderson feel. And I know that's not always the greatest, but he gives me a little bit of that Mikey Henderson, that just humongous Ramondre Stevenson. Like it's a guy that you go, I mean, if we needed a fullback for a minute or an H-back, like that's possibility there too. So, but yeah, Melendez, a little bit bigger than Mark.
Yeah. And so when you watch Melendez's film, you kind of see him like he's kind of got a little bit of speed to him. Like he can close on the quarterback or on the ball carrier pretty quickly. And I believe he plays the Mike, correct? Which is the middle linebacker. Yeah.
Mike.
So, but he's done a little bit on the opposite side of the ball. Like you can see just what kind of athlete Melendez is. And I think getting somebody like that in, a guy who can play linebacker, he can play safety. Brent Venables does really well with guys like that. And so Melendez being a top 150 player in the country, there's a reason why. Like, he's a freaky athlete. There's a reason why Miami wants him. Ole Miss wants him. Auburn wants him. So, I think it's just going to come down to NIL a little bit. Like, from what I've heard, all the schools are pretty similar on what they're offering for Melendez. So, when talking to him, it came down to, hey, like, actually, I might be able to read you exactly what he said about Brent Venables, which, by the way, he benched 430, clean 350, and he ran a 4.49 laser timed, if that helps out. Oklahoma, he said, linebacker development stands out, and he just said he really loves the coaching staff. Like, they have great relationships, which is something you hear with a lot of recruits. They always rave about these relationships that the staff build even before they get on campus. Like, when I talked to Christian Evans, right, he said, me and Todd Bates spent an hour on the phone when they offered him, just chatting it up, building that relationship. Same thing with Trent Williams. So the staff is really good at that. And then now that you have Zach Alley here, who we all say is a mini Brent Venables, and I've shared some. Yeah. And if you've seen any videos of Zach Alley out there, you kind of see, like, he looks just like Brent Venables in the way that he coaches. Yeah. So for linebackers like this, I think once you start to win some of these elite linebacker recruitments, the high 4-star kids, I think you start to see Oklahoma start to trend in that direction of landing some of those, like, premier elite talent at linebacker, like a Sammy Brown, or I'm trying to think of the other kid last year that was the 5-star that I personally liked, the one that played with Joseph Ajonye. No, the one that played with Joseph Ajonye out of Conroe, Texas. Justin Williams. Yeah. But no, I really like Elijah Melendez, and I think Oklahoma's got a good shot. I just think you got to come out of here this weekend and say, well, what does Miami do in this visit? Like, what do they offer? Like, are they going to drop a bag? And we've kind of heard that Miami's NIL collective is in shambles. So I think Oklahoma's got a good shot to land both Elijah Melendez and Mark Inhickworth. And if you do that, do you take a linebacker in 26? I'm waiting for the 1 year we just don't take a linebacker because we have too many. Or, personally, in my opinion, what I think Emmett Jones can do next year, you just go after the top premier elite prospects, because you don't necessarily have to take a bunch of dudes or any at all, and kind of go for it, just all in on a couple dudes.
Yeah, and it brings up another point where, I've been a big pillar of trying to prep everybody listening, just everybody who will listen, that we are getting to the point to where you're going to start seeing the transfers from Oklahoma out being guys that you absolutely you don't want to see leave. But it is and from talking to multiple players, it is very, very, very upfront that, listen, our job is to recruit somebody to come take your position. And you have to continue to make those pushes, because if you do not, and if you give in to the loyalty from 2 classes behind, and those, you never know. You never know what's going to happen, because you've got situations like a Caden Green where someone could come pull somebody away from your team who is a slotted in starter. So if you don't recruit somebody to also take his spot, then that happens. And so you're going to see names where we are like ready and really, really ready for, and I don't want to throw out any names because I don't have any, feet on anybody transferring out. I feel like Oklahoma's in a great spot for absolutely everybody to stick with Oklahoma. But, again, you're still a person. You were still a 4-star recruit just a few years ago, and you think, listen, I deserve to be starting. If you have a guy on the team who is not a starter and he doesn't think that he's good enough to beat the starter, then that's not the mentality you want on your team just in general. So we start seeing some of the wide receivers. I like what you're saying with Emmett Jones, is go after the big time targets, but you never know what's going to happen. I mean, how many years ago did we have 3 5-star receivers and a 5-star quarterback, and not one of them finished their career at Oklahoma? Now, a coaching staff was in there, a coaching staff change was in there, but at the same time, I do say this is you have to continue to recruit, and you can't worry about the frustration of someone, because I mean, let's go with the elephant in the room with Kevin Sperry. you were there, you're walking around, this camp, and then you hear oohs and ahs coming from a guy who's a year younger than you. You're not a human being if at some point you're not like, forget this. Like, what in the world?
There's a good chance, and we've talked about it a lot, and this is no diss to Sperry because Sperry is so damn good. There's a good chance that he ain't going to start over Jaden O'Neal. Like, you got to think about it. Jackson Arnold's got this year next. Then it's going to be the Hawkins show probably for 2 years. And then Sperry and O'Neal are fighting for that job. Yeah, and from what we saw at the camps, O'Neal's the better prospect. So, yeah, I mean, you got to have people that want to compete. If they don't want to compete, I don't know if you want that person on your team.
100%. And there's a part of your leadership skills as that quarterback that Kevin Sperry has to go. He has to stay confident within himself. Same with Jackson Arnold. Same with Michael Hawkins. These guys are going to have to really work on themselves and know who they are and be very, very grounded. And that's why, again, with this staff, you are so excited about the how they're recruiting right now, because you have quality. And we saw a quality quarterback and then just guys, and then a quality quarterback and then just guys. Those just guys, they're not going to have a place here. And I think that with Oklahoma placing such the emphasis on defense, we're finally seeing complementary football being played as the defense continues to increase and produce and get better. The offense is, there's a graphic out here about the top SEC offenses, and I think Oklahoma's number 2 or number 3. I can't remember off the top of my head, but people know that this offense is going to produce. They're going to be out there. Thing is, they don't have to carry the team anymore. It is, defense was like the break between offense, 4 years ago. You didn't play defense, you endured defense. So, but anyway, so let's talk another fun last name, which is super, super hard to pronounce. And I'm going to give it my shot here because I've messed this one up about 73 times. And it's Cade Petjak. Petjak. Okay, so that's much easier. Yep. I just look forward to a Petjak, Ianacor, and Melendez and Adebaware meeting in the backfield for a sack or something like that. Like, how would you like to be, God rest his soul, Bob Berry, making those calls? Or shout out to my boy Eddie Radosevich, because I know that he has some fun with the names, and obviously I'm not very good at them either. But Cade is a West Fargo, North Dakota, 6'5", 240 defensive end. And crystal balls are rolling down the hill for this fella to Oklahoma also.
Oh, I really wish I could just pull this one out of my hat. Supposedly some Kansas State folks don't think we have a shot because they're on the board saying that we're just following the hype with the predictions. Petjak still got to visit K-State, Nebraska, and OU's not going to land him. But no, Petjak's a very interesting. There was, I think, during the second camp, it was his official visit, and we were all sitting around watching one-on-ones, and he walked in with whoever was his host on the staff side, and they kind of like walked in behind us, and I'm like, oh, like he looks the part, like he looks big. And so you kind of got to see him standing there and everything, and Miguel Chavis, like you got to watch Miguel Chavis work. You saw Ethan Downs come up to him, like, no, Cade Petjak is everything is advertised as 6'4", 250. And it was, I think it was Josh McQuistion that I was talking to. I think this was him that said it, but I was like, they have him listed as an interior guy on 247, and I think on 3 as well. I'm like, surely he's not playing the interior because he's 250. It's like he need to put on at least another 50 pounds. And they're like, no, like I think he fits more of the Ethan Downs role, where like he plays edge, but he can slide into the interior when you're trying to run a bigger set. So Petjak, like, although he's not as high as you would like for the staff to be, no, he's going to be an absolute dude. And if you just look at his offer sheet, because he has 27 total offers, you look at who's been pursuing him. Yeah, you want this kid. You want him a lot.
I mean, you see that Brad White and Anwar Stewart, those are guys who are working on him for Kentucky. I mean, this is a guy. He's from North Dakota, and I don't know what the proximity from White Gilmore is, but you saw them. They play a little bit of a lower level of football up there. But when you're a guy like Petjak and you have that size, you stand out. And but kind of like we were talking about with Elijah Thomas, that it's super hard to go. How do you get that much recognition in Shakota? I mean, outside of Carrie Underwood, would most people know where Shakota is?
I don't think people still know where Shakota is.
I think a lot of folks who live here in Oklahoma couldn't point it out on a map. But no, Petjak is another guy that Miguel Chavis is absolutely putting in work on. And so you see these crystal balls. When these things start happening, there's behind the scenes conversations and there's momentum. And, with the Champ U barbecue coming in, I mean, there's so many opportunities for Oklahoma to bring in and to show out. And it reflects also because you have 26 guys in also. You have 27 guys. You have other people just randomly showing up. And I took a shot because I think Texas put out a video, or the kid put out a video of like an 8th grader throwing around at one of the Texas camps. But those things are happening now. And I think what we're seeing is you're seeing states, not, in Oklahoma. So here's a little background on me. So I graduated from Bartlesville, Oklahoma in 2000. I'm pretty sure that we had 6 or 7, actually D1 athletes in my whole time there. The workout facilities were not top notch. The football program was not. I was a baseball player, and I can promise you this, that Bartlesville today is nowhere near what it was when I was there. So what you're seeing is more of these guys are ready earlier. They get into weight rooms earlier. They get into weight programs earlier. They start going to these camps. And so you're seeing a younger, group of people come through. Now, what happens with a 26, 27 guy, over the next 2 years before they get to college? Well, I mean, not everybody continues to progress. Some people look like absolute studs. My youngest brother, my wife and I were talking about this earlier today. My youngest brother, I'm right now, I'm like 6'1", 200. My youngest brother was about 6'2", 240 as like an 8th grader. And they were playing Jinx, which just wipes the floor with, Bartlesville every year. And he was manhandling people. Well, I'm pretty sure that in this day and age, people would be like, this guy could be something. Well, he didn't have the mental makeup to stick with it there. And I said, I wish he would have, because he'd have been a stud to play. And, obviously I would have paid him whatever he needed to go to Oklahoma. But I digress by saying this is we are seeing the younger kids come in, and these rooms are going to continue to grow. The linebacker, we're looking pretty set. Wide receiver, you're looking pretty set. The hole that we are all wanting to hear about more is the offensive line. What is the chance that this offensive line class is still going to be, really good?
I mean, I'm not wavering off my Michael Fasusi pick. I've been pretty firm in that since November. And I'm going to continue to ride it right now. Now, I think it's pretty expected that Oklahoma would probably be the leader coming out of this weekend, because he hasn't taken the Texas official visit yet. So if you're Oklahoma, you're really kind of just crossing your fingers that Texas is somehow going to screw this up this week, and Fasusi going to see the light. Now, it's not going to be his last visit. Like, he's going to get an opportunity to come back to Oklahoma before he commits, because I think you'll probably see him commit right before the football season. You'll probably see Fasusi want to get that wrapped up around that time. As far as who else we could get, like, I know some people are high on Lamont Rogers. I've heard nothing but good things with him in Missouri. So, like, it's intriguing that he's on campus midweek right now, but I'm like, is Oklahoma going to push that hard? Like, if Missouri throws an absurd number at Rogers, do you try to match it? Like, I would rather put that money towards Fasusi. Haywood, he hasn't been on campus since September.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
he lives about 2 hours away.
At what point are we going to continue to say, oh, Oklahoma's got a good shot? Because there are people out there that say that. And I'm kind of, every time I hear it, I kind of go, I mean, I get we have recruited guys from Denton Ryan before, and he's right down the road, but he hasn't been here.
Yeah.
And he continues to not show up. Like, he continues to find reasons to not come. And so it's like your only other option is Andrew Babaloa, which is intriguing because Stanford is supposedly the leader per Wiltfong, but it's like, okay, is Oklahoma going to be able to match the academic standards of Stanford? No. Does that matter to Andrew Babaloa? I have no idea. Obviously, money doesn't, because I guarantee you Stanford's not throwing around bags. So I think you can get Fasusi. I think you get Afalava from what we've heard. It's going to be a tough battle down the stretch, though, at Utah. Mm-hmm. And then if you get those two, I say you go out there and get Sean Hutton. Offensive tackle, teammate with Fasusi. I think he's good enough for a scholarship offer. And I think that would be a nice roundabout addition to this class. At that point, you could potentially end up with 2 5-stars because Foje is going to continue to climb the ladder, especially as he goes throughout the season. If you get Babaloa and Fasusi, the Bill Beambo haters just got to go away.
I mean,
Babaloa is he's going to be a top 10 prospect when it's all said and done.
And we'll see, because you always see is football it for him. And, right now with, if he does pull the trigger on Stanford over Oklahoma, if that's his one and his number two, then education plays a much bigger part in his life than the football piece does. Now, does that mean, listen, guys, D2 guys are going to the NFL. The film is absolutely available for many, many people. And you're going to get found if you go to Stanford. So I'm not saying it's the same as him choosing North Dakota State over Oklahoma or anything like that. But if he does choose Stanford, that means his education plays a much greater deal. And that's a battle. If you lose to Stanford because of that reason, that's the one that you just have to, dust off your hands and move on. But if I had to make my call, I would say I still think Foje ends up as a 5-star. But Ryan Foje, this is going to be, he looks like Tyler Guyton. The athleticism, the way he moves, he's an absolute stud. So I think he ends up as, if he's not a 5-star, I mean, he is going to be pushing it on all the recruiting circuits. How long have you been talking to Fasusi? I mean, you reached out to him pretty early in this whole relationship.
Gosh, hold on. I have it right here. Let me just go all the way back.
Because, I mean, I lean in on
July of last year.
Okay, so you've had conversations with him, and let's be honest, like when we have these conversations with some of these guys, there is the cloak and dagger piece to where they just don't want to say much at all. But when you have the relationships and they move forward, you get a feeling because they're willing to come on and do an interview. They're willing to have more of a conversation, but it's not gospel, because we have seen people say, I'm committing to Oklahoma this weekend, and then they pull the trigger somewhere else. Jacob Phillips, a few years ago, linebacker. I remember, I think it was McQuiston also off of Sooner Scoop, that they were loading up, I think, to go to Louisiana for his announcement. And then word started hitting and it was over and they didn't make the trip. Like, those are things that do happen, because when you add the NIL portion into this, there's just a different factor that has to be played. And you cannot ever even, I mean, if one of these guys says, you know what, I am 92% in for Oklahoma right now, that doesn't mean that the signature's got to dry. It means that he feels strongly about that program. And if he made a pick currently, it would have to be that. Am I off by that?
No, but I think, with the thing with Fasusi is we've had him on the podcast twice now. And I keep alluding to this, and I want people to understand this. I'm an OU guy. Like, these recruits know that. So, in theory, as much as I try to keep these interviews sometimes very general in terms of the way I ask the questions so that we can kind of get a little more information, they're going to probably favor Oklahoma more in those podcasts. With Fasusi, though, we've had very good questions that have been answered in the general space. Every time, though, I say go back and listen to the details. He talks about that relationship with Bill Bedenbaugh a lot. He talks about that connection. And then when you ask him about Texas, right, who is presumed to be the other leader here, you never really hear him talk about Kyle Flood. And I think it's important to understand that because Kyle Flood's going to be his position coach at Texas. And if he's not talking about him and he's only talking about Sark, yeah, Texas could be a leader. They could be all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, if Oklahoma is close to Texas in money, he's probably going to go with the guy that he has the better relationship with, that he's going to have to be coached by every single day.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Sometimes you just sometimes in these interviews, you got to read between the lines and see what the kids are saying, even if they're talking pro OU, and ask them, well, hey, well, what about Texas? Like, what stands out to you about Texas, right? And if he never really talks about that position coach, I think that says a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, I fully agree with you. So before we get everything wrapped up here, guys, again, I appreciate everybody hopping on here. Again, middle of the day, and the work day is wrapping up. So if you guys are still at work and you're watching the 18 minutes getting ready to roll, make sure that you like the video. And if you have not become a subscriber, we always appreciate those too. We're going to be continuing to drop more and more of this. And again, as Oklahoma content creators, like the biggest thing that I try to do is to give you educated information. I don't ever want to step out there and say, you guys mark this down, because again, I don't feel that that's my place. I want the kids to have their opportunity to shine. Like, this is something that they've worked for. And if you're a top tier guy like Michael Fasusi, a Jaden O'Neal, Isaiah Gibson, these guys, it's not easy. It's not easy going through this recruiting process. And that's why you see so many people finally just get sick and tired of it, because their phones continue to blow up. I've been on the phone with, Danny Okoye multiple times to where, his phone's just going pa-ping, 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 pa-ping. And it is almost nonstop. And even when they commit, people are still reaching into into their DMs. People are still trying to get hold of them. Content creators like ourselves, we want to have conversations with them. So, I say this next question so we can wrap up on this piece is, PG, who do you think the next two commitments are for Oklahoma? Any class?
I think Jaden O'Neal. And it's a hard one. I want to say Mark, and I just said his name, and now I can't say it anymore.
Ian Acor is what you were saying.
Yeah, that. Yeah.
Going with that?
Yeah,
all right.
I'll go with that. I'll go with that.
And you also confirmed. I think that Josh actually has in his board chat. I think that he has the same names in there. So, some of these things are, with so many people covering this now, some of these, the secret is hard to keep. And that's why you see a lot of, cloak and dagger, a lot of people trying to do different things. This class is looking at a 26, 27, 28, people.
Maybe.
It's going to be, because I still think that there's other little diamonds that you might see from out this, from throughout the rest of the time. Also, I think everything's wrapped up, probably in December. This will be another, like, the early signing period is probably going to be the only time that we get, big pieces, unless somebody just, leaves. But no, anyway, so we have the Champion Barbecue. Do you have the dates off of those off the top of your head? I do not.
Champion Barbecue is this weekend. And just for everybody, you're going to have all your OU commits there outside of Trent Wilson. But you're going to have 5-star offensive tackle Andrew Babaloa. You're going to have 4-star wide receiver Emmanuel Choice. You're going to have 4-star defensive lineman Brandon Brown, Max Granville, Smith Orogbo, Isaiah Gibson, Christian Jones, Amarian Robinson, and then I believe 3-star linebacker Kamari Archie.
So you've got the Champion Barbecue, the non-dry brisket. Dry brisket doesn't have a place with us anymore. So, but yeah, we get the opportunities to have these guys on, and I'm pretty excited about the summer. We're I think, what are we, 70-ish days away from kickoff? It's not too far away, so I don't be surprised if we see Oklahoma come out of the gates and really get if we see what a lot of us are expecting, and we see an impressive showing, don't be surprised if you see some other people who are committed start hearing rumors about them, having conversations. The downside of that is we have an absolute loaded class right now, and it's getting tough. And
that's why I'm like, because there's guys you can't turn away. Like, if you get, like, let's say you get a Marion Robinson committed and you already have Marcus Wimberly, and then for some reason Jonah Williams wants to jump on board.
You don't turn him down.
You can't turn him away. Like, you can't turn guys like that away. What if you get, let's just say, Emmanuel Choice as your 4th wide receiver, but Caleb Cunningham wants to come on board? Like there comes a point in time where it's like, all right, are we going to push other guys out, take this commitment? Because you can't turn it away. So Oklahoma could have another pretty big class when it's all said and done.
Definitely so. So again, guys, thanks for pulling up today. We appreciate every single time that you pull up. We'll be going live again on Sunday. I think Jay's going to be back from his vacation. I think he's taking a trip to Canada or something. I can't remember. But PG, if someone wanted to find you, where are they going to find you at?
Yeah, you can find me over here on YouTube at the PG Show, or you can find me on Jay's Discord. I actually drop a lot of recruiting notes on there as I hear them. So.
Yeah, definitely so. So appreciate you guys. Until next time, this is Unfair Sports. We appreciate you all, and we will catch you soon.